Big conflict in Long Island medium star Theresa Caputo's family. The strained relationship between popular TV personality Theresa Caputo and her daughter Victoria Caputo has reached a boiling point. Long-standing rumors are true, leading to a major rift between the mother and daughter, which ultimately led to their breakup. Victoria's father, Larry Caputo, stood firmly by her side during this critical moment. Not only did he stand by her, but he also decided to leave all of his assets in Victoria's name. As a result, the father and daughter came closer, and Theresa Caputo distanced herself from her family. There are many discussions going on about this family drama. Will Theresa be able to come back into her daughter's life, or will this distance be permanent? Only time will tell. Theresa Caputo sat in her Long Island home, staring at the flickering candle in front of her. It was meant to bring her peace, but tonight, nothing could soothe her aching heart. The rift between her and her daughter, Victoria, had deepened beyond what she had ever imagined. The arguments had started small, disagreements about life choices, misunderstandings that grew like wild vines, twisting their relationship into something unrecognizable. But the final blow had come when Larry, Theresa's ex-husband, chose to side with Victoria completely. His decision to transfer all his assets to their daughter was a message loud and clear. Theresa was on the outside now. Victoria, on the other hand, felt relief. For years, she had lived under the weight of her mother's strong personality, her expectations, and the ever-present gift, or curse, of being the daughter of a medium. She loved her mother, but she needed space, a life where she wasn't just Theresa Caputo's daughter, but Victoria, in her own right. Larry saw his daughter's pain and wanted to be the father she needed. So he made a choice. He gave her his support, his wealth, and the assurance that she wasn't alone. In return, he and Victoria became closer than ever, while Theresa drifted away like a ghost in their past. Months passed. The coldness settled in. Theresa continued her work, touching people's lives with her gift, but her own life felt emptier with each passing day. Then, one evening, she received an unexpected message. A simple text from Victoria. "Mom, can we talk?" Theresa's hands trembled as she read the words. A million emotions rushed through her: hope, fear, regret. She didn't know what had changed in Victoria's heart, but she knew one thing. However, the room was silent except for the gentle hum of the candles flickering on the table. Across from Theresa Caputo sat a woman named Margaret, her hands clasped tightly together, her eyes filled with pain. She had been waiting for this moment for years, hoping to hear from her son, Jake, who had passed away in a tragic accident. Theresa took a deep breath, closing her eyes as she tuned into the energy around her. Suddenly, she felt a presence, strong yet peaceful. She opened her eyes and looked at Margaret. "Margaret, your son is here," Theresa said gently. "He's telling me he loves you, and he doesn't want you to blame yourself." Tears welled up in Margaret's eyes. "I should have done something," she whispered. "I should have saved him." Theresa shook her head. "Jake is telling me you did everything you could. He wants you to know it wasn't your fault. He says you've carried this guilt for too long, but it's time to let it go." Margaret sobbed, covering her face with her hands. "I just miss him so much." Theresa reached across the table, holding Margaret's hand. "He's still with you. He sees the way you light a candle for him every night. He hears you when you talk to him. And he wants you to be happy again." Margaret let out a deep breath, as if a weight had been lifted off her chest. For the first time in years, she felt a sense of peace. She knew she would always miss Jake, but now she also knew he was at peace, and he wanted the same for her. As she left the session, Margaret looked up at the sky and whispered, "I love you, Jake." And in that moment, she swore she felt a warm breeze wrap around her, as if her son was hugging her from beyond. However, Mark and Emily Thompson sat nervously in their living room, their hands intertwined. It had been a year since they lost their 4-year-old son, Jacob, in a tragic accident. The grief was unbearable, and no matter how much time passed, the pain never faded. They had heard about Theresa Caputo, the Long Island medium, and out of sheer desperation, they reached out. Theresa arrived with her signature warm energy, her platinum blonde hair framing a comforting smile. As she settled in, she took a deep breath and closed her eyes. Suddenly, she gasped and opened them wide. "There's a little boy here," she said softly. "He's full of energy, blonde hair, bright blue eyes. He's showing me a toy car. Does this make sense?" Emily burst into tears. "That was Jacob's favorite toy," she whispered. Mark squeezed her hand tighter. Theresa smiled. "He's laughing. He says, 'Mommy and Daddy, don't be sad. I still play with my cars in heaven.'" Mark let out a shaky breath, feeling both joy and sorrow. Does he know how much we miss him?" Theresa nodded. "He says, 'I know, Daddy. I see you looking at my pictures. I see Mommy holding my blanket at night. But I'm okay. I'm happy, and I want you to be happy too.'" Emily sobbed, covering her mouth. "I just wish I could hug him one more time." Theresa's eyes softened. "He says you do, every night, in your dreams. And when you feel a warm breeze or hear a little giggle when no one is around, that's him. He's still with you." A deep sense of peace settled over the room. For the first time in a year, the unbearable weight of grief lifted just a little. Mark and Emily knew they would always miss Jacob, but now they also knew he was never truly gone. However, Sarah sat nervously in the waiting room, her hands trembling as she clutched a small locket. Inside, her mother, Lisa, who had been murdered 5 years ago. The person responsible for her death was none other than Sarah's own aunt, her mother's sister, Rebecca. The betrayal had shattered her world, and Sarah had spent years searching for closure. Now she had turned to Long Island medium Theresa Caputo, hoping for answers. Theresa walked into the room, her signature blonde hair bouncing as she took a seat across from Sarah. She immediately furrowed her brows, as if sensing the overwhelming energy in the room. "Oh boy," Theresa muttered, pressing a hand to her chest. "I'm feeling a strong presence, a mother figure. She's telling me she left too soon." Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes. "Yes, my mom, she was killed." Theresa's face grew serious. "She's showing me someone close to her being responsible. It feels like a betrayal, like family. Do you understand this?" Sarah nodded, her throat tightening. "My aunt, my mom's own sister, did it." Theresa closed her eyes for a moment, as if listening to a voice only she could hear. "Your mom wants you to know the truth. She's saying, it wasn't your fault. You couldn't have stopped it. She says you carry guilt, like maybe you should have known something was wrong." Sarah let out a sob. "I always felt like I should have seen the signs, but I was just a kid." Theresa reached out, placing a comforting hand on Sarah's. She's saying, "Let it go, my love. You were never supposed to carry this burden." She wants you to move forward, to live your life without being trapped in that pain. Sarah wiped her tears, nodding slowly. Does she forgive her sister? Theresa hesitated for a moment, listening. Then she spoke softly. "She says she's at peace, but Rebecca must answer for what she's done. Your mom doesn't want you to waste your life seeking revenge. She wants justice, but she also wants you to be free." Sarah felt something lift inside her, a weight she had carried for too long. It wasn't full closure, but it was a step toward healing. "Thank you, Mom," she whispered. And for the first time in years, she felt her mother's love surround her once more. However, Theresa Caputo loved the holiday season. As Long Island's favorite medium, she always felt the presence of spirits more strongly during Christmas. It was a time of love, family, and remembrance. This year, she was hosting a special holiday gathering, one filled with festive cheer and heartfelt messages from beyond. Her house was decorated with shimmering lights, a towering Christmas tree, and stockings hung by the fireplace. Snowflakes drifted outside as guests arrived, bringing the warmth of friendship and laughter. But Theresa knew that beyond the holiday joy, there were messages waiting to be delivered. As she mingled with her guests, she suddenly felt a familiar tingling sensation. The spirits were near. Placing her hands on the table, she closed her eyes. Okay, someone's father is coming through, she said, her Long Island accent thick with excitement. He's showing me a candy cane and an old train set. A woman in the crowd gasped. That's my dad. He always gave me a candy cane on Christmas morning, and we'd set up his childhood train set together. Tears welled up in her eyes as Theresa smiled. He's here with you, sweetheart. He wants you to keep the tradition alive with your kids. One by one, Theresa connected families with their loved ones who had passed, delivering messages of love, healing, and laughter. Some cried, some laughed, and some simply hugged one another, feeling the warmth of their lost loved ones near them once again. As the evening wound down, Theresa looked around at the faces of her friends and family. The room was glowing, not just from the twinkling lights, but from the love that filled the air. She raised her glass of eggnog to the ones we love here and beyond. They are never truly gone, especially during the holidays. And with that, the spirit of Christmas shone brighter than ever, filling hearts with warmth, love, and the comforting presence of those who had crossed over. However, James Walker had never believed in mediums. A retired firefighter from Brooklyn, he prided himself on his logical mind and no-nonsense attitude. If I can't see it, touch it, or prove it, it's not real, he often told his friends. So, when his daughter Emily dragged him to a book signing for Good Morning by Theresa Caputo, he only went to humor her. The bookstore was packed. Fans eagerly waited in line, whispering about their own experiences with the Long Island medium. James rolled his eyes. Bunch of nonsense, he muttered under his breath. As they moved closer to the front, something strange happened. Theresa, mid-conversation with another fan, suddenly paused and looked around, her expression shifting. Then her eyes locked onto James. You, she said, pointing at him. James glanced behind him, sure she was talking to someone else. But Theresa stepped closer. There's a man standing behind you. He says he was with you that night in the fire. James stiffened, his heart pounded. Theresa continued, he's tall, broad-shouldered, light brown hair. He keeps saying, tell Jimmy I never blamed him. James felt the blood drain from his face. Only one person called him Jimmy. Does the name Mike mean anything to you? She asked gently. James's legs nearly gave out. Mike was his best friend, his partner in the fire department. They had been inside a burning warehouse 10 years ago when the roof collapsed. James had made it out. Mike hadn't. The guilt had eaten him alive ever since. Theresa's voice softened. He says you have to let it go. He doesn't want you to carry this anymore. It wasn't your fault. Tears welled in James's eyes, something he hadn't allowed in years. He swallowed hard. I never got to say goodbye. Theresa smiled warmly. You just did. Emily clutched his hand. Dad, she whispered. James took a shaky breath and nodded. For the first time in a decade, the weight lifted. As they left the bookstore, James glanced up at the sky. For the first time in a long time, he felt peace. Maybe, just maybe, there was more to this world than what he could see. However, Theresa Caputo stood in a dimly lit room, her signature blonde hair framing her face as she focused on the energy shifting around her. Across from her sat Lisa, a grieving mother whose eyes were filled with both hope and sorrow. The cameras rolled silently, capturing every emotion as they filmed an episode of Raising Spirits. Lisa's hands trembled as she clutched a silver locket, inside of which was a small picture of her son Daniel. He had passed away 2 years ago in a tragic accident, and Lisa had never gotten the closure she so desperately needed. Theresa took a deep breath, her body slightly shaking as she connected to the spirit realm. Lisa, your son is here, she said softly. Lisa gasped, covering her mouth. He's here. Theresa nodded. He's showing me a soccer ball. Did he play soccer? Tears welled up in Lisa's eyes. Yes, he loved soccer. It was his life. Theresa smiled. He says he still plays, only now it's with angels. A soft sob escaped Lisa's lips. Does he know how much I miss him? Theresa's expression softened. He does, but he doesn't want you to hold on to the pain. He's showing me a blue butterfly. Does that mean anything to you? Lisa gasped. Oh my God. The day after he passed, a blue butterfly landed on my shoulder. I knew it was him. Theresa chuckled. That was definitely him, letting you know he's okay. And he's saying something about a letter? Did you write him one? Lisa's hands clenched around the locket. I wrote him a letter every night after he passed, telling him how much I loved him and how sorry I was that I wasn't there to protect him. Theresa's eyes filled with emotion. Lisa, he wants you to know that you did everything you could. He doesn't want you to feel guilty anymore. He says, Mom, I love you. Please be happy for me. I'm at peace. Lisa sobbed uncontrollably, but this time it was relief mixed with sadness. She had needed to hear those words for so long. Theresa reached out and held Lisa's hand. He's never really gone, Lisa. He's always with you. As the session ended, Lisa wiped her tears and took a deep breath. For the first time in 2 years, she felt a weight lift from her heart. Her son was still with her, and now she could finally begin to heal. As Theresa stood up, she glanced toward the empty space beside Lisa and whispered, You did good, kid. A soft breeze moved through the room, and she knew Daniel had heard her. Hello, lovely viewers. Welcome to my channel. I am Mina. Hope your day is so well. If you like the video, don't forget to subscribe the channel.